Good morning. Okay, this is the second try. My first one was absolutely horrible. If this sounds better, I'm going to delete the first one. I changed out. I'm having to use my phone this morning. I'm sorry. I'm having to use a Bluetooth headset. I switched out headsets real quick after listening to the first one, and maybe this one will sound a little bit better. I hope so. Anyway, this is what's happened. I sub to Forbes magazine online to their YouTube channel. The Every day throughout the day they release videos of short videos anywhere from 3 minutes to usually around 10 minutes of politicians who during interviews or press conferences or town hall meetings, whatever. Anyway, two of them I saw this morning who just put a bug so far up my backside that I didn't have time to set up my laptop and get all the gear out to do this with a that way. First one was our. I gotta go with it. They're both squad members, and I've got to make this confession first. I was one of the people who ridiculed the squad. I really was. I did not think when they first came to office for the first year that they would amount to much of anything. I thought they were jokes, especially AOC and Ilhan. How wrong they have proven us all to be. They are a real danger. They have proven themselves to be a real danger. First, being supported by the fringe press and a lot of loudmouth people on social media. They've garnered so much power that they have forced the Democratic Party leadership to cower before them. The squad are the leadership of the Democratic Party. Pelosi did try to smack them down for a little bit, and she lost. She lost. The squad are the de facto leaders. They are the ones controlling what the Democrat Party goes through. Just look how far to the left they have gone since they came in just a little over 2 years ago. We need to be really afraid of these people and what they are going to do to us, to this country. But anyway, Ilhan was talking about the latest release of pictures from the immigrant camps. Why am I calling them immigrants or illegals? From these camps that the Border Patrol has the illegals in. And it's worse than anything that happened under Trump. But rather than attacking Biden for what's going on as they did Trump, calling them concentration camps and everything else, they're attacking him for not letting them in fast enough, for not just immediately bringing them in across the border and cutting them loose, letting them go wherever they want to go. One of the things that Ilhan said this morning, and this is what actually started me off, was how toddlers were coming here from their home countries afraid for their lives, seeking the American dream and asylum. Toddlers. Now, infants, if you look at most definitions, an infant is up to a year old, 18 months on the outside. From 18 months to 3 years is the normal age range that they're considered a toddler. 4 years on up, they're no longer a toddler. How can a 3-year-old, let's even go 4 years old, let's give a benefit of a doubt, a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, what does a 5-year-old know about seeking asylum? What does a 5-year-old understand about the American dream? Their brains are still smooth. A toddler still can't walk right. That's why they're called toddlers, because they toddle. You ever watch a 4-year-old walking, a 3-year-old walking, a 2-year-old walking? They're toddling. They're not walking straight. They're not walking with great purpose. Try to hold a conversation with a 2-year-old, 2.5-year-old, 3-year-old. At 3 years old, you can start to hold a basic formation of sentences and understand what's going on in their little minds. But they don't have a basic grasp on things around their own home yet. You're still teaching them not to touch the hot stove, not to reach into the dog food while the dog is sitting there eating. You're still teaching these kids this. So how can they be seeking the American dream or seeking asylum? This is nonsense, heart tugging, emotional PBS to make you want to just take them in your arms and hold them and cuddle them and comfort them, make them feel so much better because your life is so good. Why are we being so mean and not letting them just come in the country? There's thousands of these people sitting at the borders waiting to come in. Let's face facts. We are at the middle of the tail end here of a pandemic. Been going on for over a year. Businesses out of business. Business owners who couldn't keep their businesses open. My barber, she lost her shop. She lost everything because we weren't allowed to go in to get haircuts from her. She lost her business. That's why my hair is now almost longer than my wife's. But anyway, these babies that are coming across, these children that are coming across the borders without their parents being smuggled across, these are the new anchor babies. Now, for some of y'all, you don't understand. Anchor baby has fallen out of use over the years. Years ago, anchor babies were used to describe children born of illegals or of mothers who were in the country legally, but over on a short-term visa, and then they would come have a baby. That baby, thanks to a misreading of the amendment, automatically became American citizens. And that's for another rant, another diatribe. And because American policy is never to deport American citizens, well, we can't deport mom, we can't deport dad. I mean, who's going to raise the American citizen? So now, through the use of that baby, mom and dad get to stay. While mom and dad then, my brother I really need my sister to come help me with this child. And I've got 3 other children back in China, back in Russia, back in Poland, back in Uganda, back in Israel, back in Palestine, back in wherever. Notice I didn't mention South American countries. Anchor babies come from everywhere. There at one time was a tourist industry set up specifically to bring in pregnant women in their 8th and 9th month of stays, 8th or 9th month of pregnancy, just get them into the country long enough and have their visa good just long enough to have that baby. And boom, automatic American citizen. Anchor baby. These are the new anchor babies being literally thrown across the border, dropped over the fence to, they're here on American soil now. We're responsible for them. Really? Really? Are we really the world's nannies? Are we really the world's parents to every child whose parents send them across the border to use them as a reason for them to get across the border a year from now to be the new anchor baby? Is this really what we want? The images that you're seeing on the television now, including this new ones released just this morning by Project Veritas, of all the illegals being kept under a bridge, chain link fence, under a bridge. No beds, no furniture, no walls, no ceiling, no roof, under a bridge with the solar blankets. That's it. But they're being kept there by the Biden administration. Why? Why were they brought across the border to start with? Why were they allowed across the border? Another unpopular opinion. I've got no problem with putting American soldiers, American Air Force, using the Coast Guard and Navy to patrol our borders, including the Rio Grande. Put them out there on the Rio Grande, patrolling them to prevent illegal immigration. Have A-10s flying the border. Every on occasion, I just let loose with that big old brrrr. Yeah. Remember, we are not building this wall to keep people in. We're not Russia. We're not East Germany. We're not trying to keep people in our country. We're trying to keep illegals out. It's a castle fortress. Think of that, the castle walls, the mold. It's to prevent invaders. Wasn't to keep people in the castle. It's to prevent invaders from coming into the castle, not to keep people in, but to keep people out. That's what we need on our southern border. That's what we need even on portions of our northern border. Yes, we do have illegal immigration coming across the northern border. We need this. We cannot afford to allow every person who wants to be here. I've got no problem with immigration, legal immigration, people who are bringing something to our country, a benefit to our country, people who have the wherewithal, who have the skills, who have the ability to support themselves and to be a benefit to our country, to bring something to our country, not to come here and be sucking on the government teat the whole time they're here. Well, my uncle has a job as a day laborer and he can support us. Really? Really? What skills are you bringing to our country? Well, I know how to push a lawnmower. Yeah, so does every 14-year-old boy and girl in the country knows how to push a lawnmower. You're not bringing a skill to the country. You're being a drain. We don't need you in our country. You may want to come. I can't afford to bring more people into my home. I can't support more people in my home. We can't, as a country, can't support more people coming into our country right now. We're just coming out, hopefully, of a pandemic. Hundreds of millions of businesses closed down. Millions of people out of work still. And we want to bring more people in? People to suck off the government tit? We can't afford it. This is not the time to do it. If there's ever a time not to do it, right now is not the time to do it. Pull on your heartstrings all you want. We cannot afford to be doing this. Then there was Ilhan, or I'm sorry, AOC. AOC was pushing HR 8, the new gun control bill, expanding background checks. Why doesn't anybody support it? How can anybody not support doing background checks? Well, what's wrong with making certain that only the right people own guns? Guess what? As you admitted, this is just your first step. What happens next? What happens after that? It's got to be gun registration. It has to be gun registration. This bill, H.R. 8, it's not just closing the so-called gun show loophole, which really doesn't exist. It's just there because somebody decided to use it, call it that. What it is saying that unless you are a licensed dealer, FL holder, etc., you cannot loan a gun to your son to use while hunting or your daughter to go hunting with. You can't loan a gun to your next door neighbor who wants to go to the range. He's thinking about purchasing the same firearm you have. He wants to take it to the range and shoot off a few hundred rounds to see how he likes it. And yes, I said a few hundred rounds. As a shooter, when I go to the range, if I don't take 200 rounds with me, I'm wasting my time. I'll shoot up 200 rounds in a half hour easily. My magazine holds 17 rounds. I've got another magazine that holds 30. Think about it. How long? 200 rounds is just getting warmed up. But without this bill would make it illegal for us to loan these guns out to anybody. Or even if we did loan it to them, it makes it illegal for them to return it back to us without a background check. Background checks, $25 to $50. So that means for me to loan a gun to Joe, and Joe to loan the gun, give me back my gun, that's $100 in background checks right then and there. This is just the beginning. Oh, a 10-day waiting period. Oh, excuse me, 90-day waiting period if the FBI is too busy to do your NICS. And oh, at the end of the 90 days and the FBI is still too busy to do the NICS check, sorry, you don't get your gun. By the way, most gun dealers, they won't even process that NICS check until you've paid at least 50% of the gun up front. And no, you don't get your money back. And these NICS checks, I'm going to be generous here. I've read reports where it says up to 95%, but I'm going to be generous and say 75%. 75% of the denials are in error. They are in error. Oops, sorry, we denied your gun check, and oh, you applied for an appeal on that. We researched it. Oh yeah, we're sorry. We fat fingered the keyboard and put in your social security number incorrectly. And oh yeah, you're allowed to have your gun. Uh, oh, excuse me. You have a traffic warrant out, and yes, the FBI is doing this. If you have a ticket from traffic court, a warrant out for you because of a ticket of traffic court, you are considered a fugitive from justice, and you're on the do not buy list at the FBI. That's not the purpose of the NICS check. A traffic warrant, a ticket. You forgot to pay a traffic ticket, and all of a sudden you're a convicted felon, and you're ineligible to own a firearm. Meanwhile, the FBI is not, and the DOJ is not prosecuting people who are actually doing straw purchases. They're pleading them down. A few years ago, there was a case where a woman bought over 70 guns, every one of them straw purchase. They let her plead it down to one charge. She got off on probation. no jail. And the people she was buying for weren't prosecuted, or they were pled down to a single nonsensical charge, let off on probation. But meanwhile, they're putting people who have a bench warrant for a traffic ticket, treating them as convicted felons. No. But once they have your guns registered, let me get back to this. Once you have your guns registered, and they, which has to be, I mean, what's the purpose of doing background checks if you don't keep it? And remember this, after Katrina, several local sheriffs went to the local gun stores, grabbed the forms used for the NICS checks, and they went house to house confiscating firearms. Yes, this on video. There are videos of it happening. Going from house to house with the forms in hand. Last year you bought a Ruger 357 from so-and-so. Where is it? We want it. We're confiscating this for your own safety. We don't want anybody breaking into your house and stealing your gun. So we're confiscating it. Meanwhile, they're leaving these people defenseless from anybody who's breaking into their house. Right now, there are court rulings and laws against the FBI keeping these NICS records, because that would be a de facto gun registration. The Democratic Party in control, swipe of the pen, and boom, that restriction is lifted, and all of a sudden they've got guns being registered. So they know exactly who owns what. Now what happens? Well, this gun, we don't like it. We think it's too scary looking, or it's capable of holding a 17-round magazine or a 30-round magazine. It's black in color. So, yeah, that gun's now illegal. So we're going to have a government buyback, air quotes, and you've got to turn that firearm in, and yeah, we'll give you $50 for it. And we'll give you $25 for each one of these magazines. And oh yeah, we're going to go to your house to make certain that you didn't keep anything. Government gun buybacks. Question, when did the government own that firearm? I didn't buy that firearm from them. The manufacturer didn't buy that firearm from them. They didn't buy that firearm from the manufacturer. That firearm was bought from the manufacturer by the dealers, then sold to me. That's no buyback. That's a mandatory confiscation with a pittance given back to me as saying that that's, they're just not taking it. They're buying it from me. Meanwhile, if you don't participate in that gun buyback, you are now a felon. You are now able to go to jail, convicted for owning an illegal firearm. That's the next step. No gun registration. First, knowing who all has guns, then gun registration, then mandatory buybacks and gun confiscations. It may not be done in 5 years. Definitely won't be done in 3 years. May not be done in 5 years. It may take them 10 years. Like it's taken them 20 years to get this done. Dianne Feinstein years ago said that if she could write a bill saying Mr. and Mrs. America, turn in your firearms, she would do it right then and there. That was 20 years ago, maybe even 30. This has been a long-term plan of the Democratic Party to take our guns from us. Second Amendment means nothing to them. It really and truly doesn't. All they want is to disarm the American people. They don't care. They've got no, they just don't care. That's it. I mean, my brain hurts. My brain hurts with this stuff. It really and truly does. Okay. And and I'm going to tie these two issues together: the illegal immigration and these and HR 8. If background checks are so great for guns, to ensure that only the right people own guns? Why aren't background checks on immigrants, especially people who have attempted to cross our borders illegal? Why aren't background checks even more so important for them to make certain that only the right kind of people are coming into our country or are having children in our country to later become anchor children, anchor babies? Why can't we get background checks done on them before we allow them in our country? The Democratic Party is no longer a party of the American people. Remember, at one time, there was a Democratic leader. He said, ask not what your country can do for you, but ask what you can do for your country. I'm probably 99% accurate on that statement. We all know who that was. That was President John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And he was a Democrat. Today, the Democratic Party is not of ask not what you can do for your country, but demand that your country do for you. Demand that your country do for others. The Democrats are no longer about upholding America, building America up. They're about tearing it down. They're no longer about individual freedoms. They're about government granted privileges. HR 1, the federal takeover of election systems, using a four-word statement in the Constitution as why they're going to be able to take over every election in the country. Voter ID laws no longer required. Voter ID laws are now illegal if they get their way. You don't have to prove that you're even an American citizen. And don't forget, Democrats want illegals, and they have approved it in portions of California, illegals to vote in your local elections because, well, they live here too. They should be able to vote who's running their schools and who's running their local governments because they do live here. They're not American citizens, but they're allowed to vote in local elections. Thank God that isn't a federal law yet, but the Democrats have their way. That will be a federal law. Because once they take over your local election system, then the states and local governments can no longer set their own laws. That will be next, allowing non-citizens to vote in federal elections because, well, they live here too. Yes, I'm on a diatribe. I'm on a roll here. I've gotten a little bit off. I'm sorry for that. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this thing up real quick. The other night, last Monday night, I was very privileged to be asked to be on Minions of the Zoo with Skeptalk, Prospero, Dr. Functional, Sora Luna, and others. And I really appreciate it. That's the first time I've ever been invited onto a stream. I've been invited to be back tonight. If everything works out, I will be for the last hour. And I'm very appreciative of Prospero and Skeptalk holding these invitations to me. I try to be a lot nicer on their streams. I'm going to try to be a lot nicer. I'm going to try not to be quite so much of a diatribist. But I see a lot of things going wrong in our country today. Things that scare me. They scare me about what kind of country we're leaving for our children. What kind of country is my grandson, who's only 2.5 years old? What kind of country is he going to grow up in? This scares me. and it really truly does. So hopefully the audio on this one sounds a lot better. If it does, I'll be deleting the other one, which is basically the same. So y'all have a good one, and please join us on Minions of the Zoo tonight and every night. Listen to the Lords of the Night with Satsu and Scribe Light. A lot of fun and interesting conversation. And no, I don't agree with everybody else on these shows. I disagree with about as much as I agree with. So just it's a good place to listen to both sides of the conversation a lot. And even conversation from people from Canada and Australia bringing in their views about what's going on in their countries and how what we do here affects them. Yes, we as the Americans, United States, have a much larger effect on the world and other countries besides what just goes on inside our own borders. Have a good one, y'all. Get another cup of coffee.